Now, as South Africans demand better service delivery, it seems councillors have their own problems. The Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs has established that over 300 councillors in KwaZulu-Natal are unable to read or write. For more insight on this, we are joined by political analyst Tessa Dooms. Tessa, this just reminds me of an interview I did a few weeks ago where it came to light that 81% of grade 4 learners can't read with full meaning. So it's just shocking to see, numbers like this in our political structures. Does this, highlight the fact that our education system might be very, very flawed?
Thank you for having me. Yes, we've known for a long time our education system is flawed. So besides our literacy rates at the basic education level, especially at the grade 4 level where we test for ANA the first time, being exceptionally low over a long period of time. The stat that always comes to my mind about why our education system is broken is that only half of the people who start grade 1 as a cohort ever finish matric. So for every cohort of grade 1s that we send into the system, only half of those people make it through to grade 12. So we are losing a lot of people in the basic education space. And we're not getting most people through to a quality education at that level alone. So when we start talking about higher education, the attrition rate is so much smaller than we imagine in our minds. And so we must ask, what kind of society are we? Because our leadership is a reflection of our society. Our representatives represent the society they are from. So if we are represented by the society we are from, and we have a flawed, broken education system in socioeconomic conditions that is either pushing people out of the education system or making it unplausible for them to be there because of poverty, deprivation, inequality, and its impacts, then we can't be surprised that those who represent us represent the outcomes of that broken society.
Then, of course, one can argue that, a strong leader doesn't necessarily mean that they need to be, literate to a level where they should be able to read or write necessarily. But of course, there are some practical complications when it comes to this, when you are a leader or a councillor. So my question then is, I think at the end of the day, this is then a case of strong leadership versus, illiteracy. So maybe you can just delve into that. Should these leaders then, or these councillors, be empowered in a way?
Yeah, so I think that there are two parts of it. So how do we end up with the representatives that we have in our current political climate? And communities will tell you often that it's only one of two ways that you end up with your public representatives at ward level. One is that parties impose people, and in that case, you have to ask parties to be accountable for empowering people that they are going to put into the political system. Parties have not done great jobs at all of doing even political education, never mind empowering people with the skills to govern. And so from our MPs to our MPLs to our ward councillors, where parties have been dominant in their ability to tell ward councillors what to do, to select them, and to give them political consequences, they've not put in the same amount of effort into training them on the skills of governance. And so that's the one way in which this can be addressed. The other way is that what communities have asked for more and more in South Africa over time is the ability to represent themselves from within their communities, or unrelated to parties almost at all. And in that case, the task is much harder because society needs to create, and government itself needs to create mechanisms to ensure, for example, if you go into any other job situation, a job requires to have an induction. If that induction recognizes that there's a skill deficit at any level, including reading and writing, then that induction program would need to address that. And I think governance and government needs to think about that very carefully, responding to those realities. And communities also, we as voters, we as communities who are voting people in, we should be more plugged in than we are to supporting the people we put in to represent us. And so there are examples, I'm in Cape Town at the moment, there's examples of people in Khayelitsha, in a ward, who came together, decided that they were going to elect a representative from their community who they know. And now they accompany that councillor to every council meeting. they send contingencies besides the ward committee itself. And so they're going there so that they can support the councillor, so they can also hear what's going on. So whatever deficiencies or whatever strengths or weaknesses the councillor has, we as the community must also get involved in making up for that.
Very important that you mentioned there. You know, it is important for the community to then also, you know, take a step here and say that, you know we voted in this council, we elected this councillor to represent us as a community. But of course, if this councillor can't read or write, it is very important then for a community member to then maybe go with this councillor to certain meetings and assist them in some or other way, or even for a political party to do that. So that example, very, very necessary for other communities then to also follow that lead, like the one then, Khayelitsha, you just mentioned. But of course, you know, at the end of the day, Tessa, the efficiency and the success of a municipality can't, you know, be blamed necessarily on a councillor that can't read or write. There's more to play when it comes to the success of a municipality, in South African context especially.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I address that particularly, I just want to remind us that who represents us is a product of a democratic process, right? And so in a democratic process, merit is relative. Merit is about what we as voters think is the most important thing for our representative to have. And if that isn't the ability to read and write, then that's where we are at, right? There may be other, as you said, important qualities that somebody might have that we think might better represent us. However, what mitigates for whatever democratic outcome there is should be the strength of the bureaucracy of the state. And one of the things we've not had sufficient conversations about in this country is the ways in which politics has infiltrated the state's bureaucracy. So, I mean, we have conversations about cadre deployment, but I think we're having them in the wrong ways, because cadre deployment at a political level makes complete sense. So deploying cadres, for instance, from a party at a political level to provide political leadership in elected spaces makes sense. But when cadre deployment starts to infiltrate the bureaucracy, and you are substituting political skills for actual accounting skills, political skills for actual legal skills within your space, that's the problem. Because in every country in the world where things work, they work because the civil service is not held ransom by the politicians. And we have that crisis in South Africa that we are not addressing.
Thank you so much, Tessa, for this morning. A political analyst, Tessa Dooms. We do